So I'm going to try and keep this to an hour. If you have a pen and a piece of paper handy, if you have questions, please write those down throughout the presentation. I'm going to try my best to save questions at the end so we can get through the slides, and we'll also be using the pen and paper for an exercise that we have. But yeah, I'll just get right into it. In order to start this conversation, I'd like to start off with some community agreements in order to welcome us and help ground us in this conversation. There's a lot going on in the world, and sometimes issues around race or how to be an ally in communities, non-traditional communities outside of your own, can be difficult and they can be hard. And we might have a lot of questions around them. So I just want to make sure everybody feels welcome and safe. And in order to do that, I hope we can agree on these agreements that I have up here. And if you agree with these statements, you can just give me a thumbs up. You can do that, that way just on screen, or you can use the reaction on your screen and you can give me a thumbs up that way too. But for the first agreement, in this conversation, I hope that we can all listen to understand and respond with curiosity, which, if there's going to be information in here that's new to you, some of it might not be new, but, that just means kind of taking a step back, listening to understand and respond with curiosity. And I see some thumbs up. Be present, be open, be authentic, come as you are. Respect confidentiality. Respect our diversity. Move up, move up. This basically means somebody who tends to be a bit more introverted and you really have a question, I'm giving you the opportunity to move up and ask that question and engage. Look for learning. Always a lot to learn. And have some fun. Anybody not agree, totally opposed to these agreements we have for our space? So this next slide, I think, Nina, you really framed this up quite well. Just the thing that's on my mind, and I imagine, a lot of your mind, the attacks that we've seen on our U.S. Capitol and our democracy, and what that means for us as a nation moving forward. And in those attacks, there's definitely people with a lot of different opinions of what this country should do and how we should move forward with the next presidency. But I wanted to present to you this wheel of change, and basically this theory says that in order to change somebody's mind or to create social change in the world, we need all three of these things working together. So we need to be able to change the hearts and the minds of people, their behaviors, and the structures that might be at play. When I think of our hearts and minds, I think of what's important to us. What are our values? What is it that really pulls on our heartstrings? When I think of our mind, I think of what type of information can you present to change somebody's mind, whether that's through research or photos or all types of information that might be out there. When I think of behavior, I think of how we communicate with each other, how we talk to each other, the different cultures and the different backgrounds that we come from, being able to find common ground across all of those things. When I think of structure, I think of power structure mostly. One structure and one thing that environmentalists tend to bump into when we're trying to engage maybe a new community or somebody who we're not used to engaging with, we do what's called parachuting. So if you've never heard of that term, please write it down and just Google it, environmental parachuting, and what that means. That typically means that, oftentimes we might get money from a campaign or from a funder, and they might say, go help out these people who are being impacted by this pipeline, or, these people who are being impacted by this trash incinerator. They're breathing toxins, they're breathing all this air. Go get them to sign some petitions for our campaign so they can support, this piece of legislation. And so that's when you go into a community, ask these people you don't really know to sign a petition, and you tell them, just sign all this, do all this stuff for me, and I guarantee you'll have clean air, clean water tomorrow. That's not really how it works. So I kind of view that as a top-down approach, but what we really should be doing is doing more community and authentic organizing, working from the bottom up, letting the community lead from where they want to, looking to them as the experts on what it is maybe that we need to understand about their community and how it works. So again, you just need all three of these things to create that sort of change. I think this is just a really great graph to show that. Another concept I wanted to introduce to you, in being a good ally, is just we're all on a spectrum. There's all types of allies that are out there. I love this graph. I love graphs in general, but I want to kind of explain this to you because I think it's a really important one when we talk about the people that we're trying to find common ground with and that we're trying to convince. Some of them will be able to change their hearts and minds. Some of them we won't. We'll have to leave them behind in our creation for social change. So you've got your active allies that are on the left side here in the light gray. These are your people who are out in the community, door knocking, getting petitions signed, meeting with their legislators. Those are, a lot of the people that we have here, making public comments that are very much so engaged. Those are our active allies and people we can count on. We've got our passive allies. These might be people, a lot of my friends actually, who might not be super involved in environmental issues, but they're posting on social media. They're talking about it. They're trying to create the conversations with their family, and they're not necessarily taking further action or the most action that they can do, but they're sharing the information. They're on our side. And then you've got those people who are neutral when we've got things going on at the Capitol, and they might post a picture of their breakfast or something. Maybe that's something unrelated, or they're just not listening to what's going on. Then you've got passive opposition and active opposition, just people who are on the complete another side of you. When it comes to creating social change, the theory is that you only need 3.5% of the population with you to create a type of social change. So those are people who are in your passive allies, the people that you all may have heard of this term, ladder of engagement. So you've got people who really care, that you might be able to bring along with you to a hearing, or you might be able to write, a letter of support. So I just, when it comes to the issues that we're all very passionate about, I think this is just a really important graph, and checking myself and checking each other that we're not going to convince everybody of everything, but there's certainly, huge potential and a population of people that we can bring along with us, and whatever it is that we're trying to convince people of. I've got an exercise here, and I just kind of want to gauge everybody and ask you some different questions, and I'll just kind of read these aloud. But in the chat box, I'd love to hear from you all. If you can just take a moment to type out, why is social change important to you? And we'll go question by question. We'll give everybody at least a couple minutes. These are really great. I'm just going to read some of these aloud. So social change is important because it's the best way to also bring about government change. Mm-hmm. Moral imperative. Mm-hmm. To address moral wrongs. Social change is important and needed to take a collective change in order to make a sustainable impact. Mm-hmm. Believing in equality and equity. It's the way to have true democracy. No one can be truly happy if others are suffering. These are all really great and really important. I love these answers. Equality, rights, and opportunity. Absolutely. Social change can make life better for all. Definitely. I think these are all important and things to continue to look back on, because these are types of things that keep me motivated. And I hope these are things that continue to keep you motivated too. So for the next question, I'd like to hear from you all. Why might some people resist social change? So we might resist it because, let's see, afraid of status quo, privilege, laziness, misplaced priorities, afraid of loss of position, power, fear of what people may lose, privilege, ego, feeling threatened, people's view of society, belief systems are challenged. We are comfortable. Don't think about others suffering. Absolutely. Fear of change. If change is in conflict with religious or cultural teachings, folks are afraid to lose family and place. Vital issues need to be addressed. Fear of unknown differences, fear of different, unfamiliar fear, right? Too much work and time. It certainly takes a lot of work and time, that's for sure. So now I'd love to hear, why might we persist? Even in, all of this resistance, what keeps us going? Social change will benefit everyone except a small percentage of people, because it's for the good. Faith calling us to do the work, moral imperative, waking up to the reality of other suffering, strong belief that we need to do better, survive, for equity. The hope of change for the good keeps us going, and the community of hope that we gather helps tremendously. Really caring about the issue, better for all, community, eyes on the prize, justice, grandkids, creation, spirituality. Mm-hmm. Our basic human right, or human basic right, excuse me. Once you see injustice, you can't ignore it. That's definitely true. To give everybody and future generations equal opportunity for good life so we may thrive. This is all really, really great. These are things that, I want you all to be thinking of as allies, as community allies. When you might be going into a hard conversation with somebody, when you're trying to convince them of what it is, that you're working on and why it might be important. there's some really interesting research that, I can try and dig up on how to create social change, and how to work towards people's hearts and minds and create impact change. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there, but I think all of these points that you all have made are really important, and they're really good things and tools to have, in going into conversations with people who might not agree with you. So now I'd love us to do a fun exercise and use your pen and paper to create your personal identity wheel. And I'll do one as well. But this is a really fun exercise, and I think it's a really, really great way to make friends with people, and to figure out some things that maybe you didn't know you had in common with somebody else. But I'd love us just to take a few minutes to draw maybe a circle or a square in the center of your paper and write your name in the middle. And what you're going to do is, just like this picture, you're going to draw some extension lines, and you're going to write out some things that you feel create or make up your identity based on who you are. Could be things maybe that are physical or personal or spiritual to you. There's a really great example on the screen. Maybe you're a mother, maybe you're a father, maybe you're a grandchild. Maybe there's a specific type of music you like. Maybe you're an artist. And we'll just take a couple minutes to write those out. And when we're done, I'd love to have a couple volunteers share what they have. Okay. Is there anybody who'd be willing to unmute themselves and share what they've written down in their identity wheel?
Right, I think we can't see everybody, so if someone's raising their hand or wants to, we can't see, so just unmute and share with us.
This is Ann Smith-Reiser. I'll go since no one is. I have down here, Wife, mother, a nana, environmental scientist, hiking and walking, love camping and traveling. I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I love to meditate. I love vegetarian cooking. I love music of all types, and I love gardening.
I love that. Very nice to meet you, Mary. We've got a lot of common interests. Anybody else who'd
I'll share.
like to share?
This is Bernadette. I will share. I'll put my camera on for a second here. Share this. So I have advisor, naturalist, community member, singer, mother, Episcopalian, grandmother, sister, walker, ally, dog lover, honest, scuba diver, teacher, researcher, daughter, advocate, friend, and wife, and gardener.
Great. Very nice to meet you, Bernadette.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
So how did y'all feel doing this exercise, writing down some of the things that make you you and make you unique? Hopefully it felt good. I love this exercise because, you know, I think that first impressions really matter. Sometimes you can meet people and have the worst impression of them. They could say something, look at you wrong, do something. It could be a total stranger, or it could be somebody maybe who's a family member that's very close, and you just you didn't get a good impression of them, and that, you know, that's something that really sticks with you. I think an exercise like this is a way to really common ground with people and find out things that you might have in common with other people that maybe you didn't think that, you know, you thought you had. You know, this group, I think we all have a lot in common with each other. We meet around a lot of, you know, common issues and common things, but I think when it comes to being an ally and showing up, you know, for other people, it takes coming out of your comfort zone sometimes and finding out what are some things that you might not have in common, and some things that, you know, you do have in common that you could have in common with other people. So I love this exercise. It's always fun to do in person because you find out even more about people that maybe you didn't know before in your own group of people. So these are some things, well, this is a concept that I feel is really important when it comes to being an ally and showing up for other people, but it's to really get out of your comfort zone and to try and identify common ground. And so I'll kind of open this up for discussion by just asking this question here to you all. But I'd love to hear about maybe a positive or an unexpected experience that you had connecting with someone of a different background than yours. And if you have an example and you have an experience where you met somebody and something really beautiful happened and you discovered really something that you weren't expecting, I'd love to hear about that experience and maybe what you discovered. And I can kick us off to get us started. One experience I was thinking about is this was the night before the 2016 presidential election. And I'm from a very rural area in Virginia. And, you know, some of the people that, you know, I work with, or excuse me, I grew up with, they're on the opposite political spectrum as me. And yeah, I'm a Democrat, and, you know, they are Republicans. And so the night before the election, you know, I was going to be working at the polls, and they invited me over for matzo ball soup. They're a Jewish Italian family. And, they started to ask me, well, Mariah, what do you do now? What is it that you do? And I start explaining, I do all this stuff for the environment. And, they're starting to ask me a lot of different questions about it. And they're like, wow, that's really cool. I saw this power plant that's being built in our community. And they start talking about environmental justice without, I think, even realizing it, and talking about how, some of the things that are going on in nature just are unfair and are inequitable, to certain individuals. So they started naming those things. And we got to a really nice place in that conversation, but that was definitely a memorable moment that I had that night before, we got our new president. And it was definitely something that I wasn't expecting to hear from people who I've known for a really long time. But I'd love to hear from someone else if you maybe have an example that's similar or different from that.
I have another political one. I was campaigning for a woman right outside of a polling place. I think it was 2018, not 20. There weren't many people coming by. It was a kind of a lull in activity. So the only person that was there was actually the candidate that I was campaigning against, and so we were forced to kind of have a conversation, and it wasn't all that bad. We talked about things that did not have anything to do with the campaign, and he was human. I found out he was human after all. Yeah.
That's great. That's a lovely story. And for the next question, it's similar, but was there ever a time where someone has felt where it maybe was difficult to make a connection with someone of a different background than yours? And now, after hearing about some things I've shared about being an ally, can you imagine a way now that maybe you could have overcame that barrier?
Well, I'm in a racial justice circle, about half people of color and half people white, different ages, probably more gray haired than young. But so we find that the important thing is to share stories, to get to know each other better by stories, and also to hear their stories about things that people like me might ask, even though we didn't ask those questions, but they said that people kind of want them to explain how all Black people think. Well, obviously, they can't be a representative on giving you the idea of how everybody thinks. And with Black Lives Matter particularly, people are expecting them to give the opinion of all Black people, which they can't give. They can give their opinion and why they need to march for Black lives, which of course I've done also. But it is interesting how we assume that or some people assume that they can give us all the answers for these complex problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely true, Mary. I'm glad that you brought that up, and that's something that we'll definitely get a bit more into it, into this discussion. But I hope some of the things I've talked with you about have given you a new or a refresher on how to create common ground, with people who might be different from you, who might come from different backgrounds. Sometimes, referring back to the social change chart, sometimes it takes us being able to make a change within our own hearts and minds, being able to really think about maybe some of the structures that we have in place, undoing those restructures, thinking back to our behaviors and how we're interacting with people. A lot of times it takes you know, what we're already going through and kind of undoing some of those things. You know, I'm a person of color. I'm an LGBTQ person as well, but I don't have all the answers. And you know, neither do you all. But you know, I try to come to this work each day with a open heart and an open mind, always looking to learn. But sometimes it takes us being able to make that change as well. So I really appreciate you sharing. So I wanted to talk a little bit here about implicit bias and some of the implicit biases that we may have. Implicit bias is typically the attitudes, stereotypes, and beliefs that we show that can affect how we treat others. Implicit bias is not intentional. It can still impact how we judge others based on factors such as race, ability, gender, culture, language. So we all have biases. That's how we make decisions. From, you know, we get up in the morning and we decide what we want to wear based on the weather, or how we want to get to work, or, you know, we might take a bus, so we might have to decide where are we going to sit down on that bus. So we all have biases. It's just a thing that we do to make decisions. But a lot of the times, you know, people's biases can be implicit, and you know, we can tend to judge others without even knowing them a lot of times. This is kind of interesting. At the bottom of this chart here, it says in early childhood settings, implicit biases can affect how providers perceive and respond to children, which can lead to unfair differences in the use of exclusionary discipline practices such as suspension and expulsion. There's a interesting YouTube, you can find this on YouTube, but there's some children, they might be in like kindergarten or first grade, and somebody asks them, you know, which is the pretty doll and which is the ugly doll? And it's got a black doll and a white doll. And most of the children are pointing to the brown doll as the ugly doll and the white doll as the more beautiful doll. And so that's just a really sort of eye-opening video, because whoever thought, you know, these young individuals and these young kids are being taught these things. But a lot of the times it's our implicit bias, us not knowing that we're giving off these behaviors. And I'm going to get a little political here, but for example, you know, when it comes to, you know, President Trump, some people might say he's not a racist person because maybe he's never said, you know, words that are maybe he's never said the N-word or other sort of derogatory terms, right? So just because he's never said that doesn't mean that he might have hate in his heart for certain populations. So just want to point this out because I think it's really important, just to name the fact that, again, we all have biases and that's okay. But understanding that we have biases and when they come into play and when we might need to check ourselves is really important. So there's a video here that I want to share with you all. And with the Zoom technology, whoops. Hold on one second. With Zoom, sometimes it can be difficult to play. So I'm going to drop this video here in the chat box. My computer's not responding. But this is a really great video, and it's a really great example. It's about a ball of yarn, and her name is Pearl. And she's in a new workplace environment, and you know, she's somebody who can represent any sort of identity that might be from a marginalized or an alienated group. But I'd love for you all to take some time to watch this video and to think about how culture showed up in this video. And I'm trying to put it in the chat box here, but my computer is not responding, it says.
I got it, Mariah. It's there.
Oh,
Same
okay,
here.
good.
Yeah, I've got it now too.
About a
Mariah.
9-minute video. It's about a 9-minute video. So I'll just ask that we mute ourselves, upload the video in your browser, think about how culture showed up in this video, and we'll come back at about 7:51. I had to re-log in.
Okay.
Has everybody watched the video? Is that enough time? Great. Okay, well, we'll just have an open discussion. Love to hear overall what you think of the video, but how did you see that culture showed up? How did it play a role in the video?
I had flashbacks.
I agree. I spent most of my career in a male-dominated office.
I
It's a little
started,
triggering.
I started my, I guess it, I worked for a really large pharmaceutical company, and when I first transitioned to marketing, I was often the only woman in the room, and a lot of those situations were exactly what it was like.
Can you get more specific and like what was it like exactly? Maybe from Pearl's perspective or your perspective.
So I think what I picked up on was that Pearl learned pretty quickly that if she was going to fit into the culture, she had to change. And so she changed how she dressed, how she communicated. She picked up on the cues from the men. And I remember doing those things, you know, learning how to joke with men, because men have a different way of communicating with each other, and learning the kinds of things that they talked about. Like I would talk about sports, and I really never was big into sports, but I learned some things to be able to join in the conversation.
And there's a term for that. It's called code switching. Changing your normal behavior to fit in to a work environment or a social environment. Some people might say it's like when I put on my telemarketer voice, you might adapt or change the way that you say things.
In that, I am introverted by nature, but in that culture, you can't be introverted. And so, yeah, I felt like I had to put on a persona, and I had to carry that persona all the time. And if I ever didn't, then there was like all this confusion about what's wrong with Claire. It's like, there's nothing wrong with Claire. It's just me. So, yeah.
It also seems like the men are code switching as well, because they can't all be extroverts, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, even in the video there, they couldn't all be exactly the same, but they were all pretending to be part of that culture.
Yeah.
And then they were freed from it when Pearl and the other ball of yarn, you know, started to diversify that workplace. They could all be themselves.
Anybody else want to share, whether from a personal perspective or how you saw culture play a role in this video?
So I'm going to be really honest, and I'm going to say that I thought that the video was a nice start for people who might not have a clue, but it was very Pollyanna-ish, if anybody's old enough to remember that term. And that I wholeheartedly believe that cultural differences exist by race and class and gender. And my experience working for 30 years in an organization that was almost completely female was like that. And it wasn't because of religion or race or gender. It was very, very difficult working with other women. I mean, it's not because they were women, they're just other people who were other women who were manipulative and all sorts of really unpleasant dynamics going on, you know, like for 30 years, because the leadership didn't know how to deal with it. So I just want to throw that in there, that it's not always based on obvious, you know, distinctions between people that might make it more easy to see.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I appreciate that point. I think, you know, I kind of tried to put a disclaimer in here that I think that Pearl can, you know, in this video, she's working in a male dominated industry, but when it comes to society as a whole, this can happen in all types of places. I think I would like to think that the culture that I have at the organization, environmental organization, nonprofit that I work for and work in is very much different from this sort of business oriented sort of culture. But I really appreciate your comment, Lenore, and I think that's something really good to keep in mind. But overall, you know, with this video, I really just wanted to show that you know, I think when it comes to Pearl and her identity, I think, you know, what was unfortunate to kind of see in the end is that, you know, she had to kind of change and morph into fitting into this culture. And there's a lot I think that we can do as individuals to make more space for people. You know, overall, you know, when it comes to our work and being a good ally. And so I see we have just a few minutes left of the presentation, and I have just a few slides here. But I think that there's some really great takeaways that we can learn, you know, from that video, and, you know, and just how to be a good ally. I think it was Mary who said something about, you know, sharing stories and how that can be, you know, really powerful when entering a new community or engaging, you know, with a group that you might not know. You know, you can't just expect to go somewhere and tell people to teach you when you might not know about something. But, you know, listening to understand and, you know, look for learning, I think that's important. Moving at the speed of trust. It takes time to, you know, be an ally or stand up for somebody who might share different experiences than you, who might come from different backgrounds. We talked a lot about finding common ground, but I think that is a definite way to identify a way, you know, to engagement, to long-term engagement. Showing up and being consistent. Don't make it a one-off kind of thing. Make it a long-lasting, you know, continued relationship where there are mutual benefits. But overall, you know, this work is a lifetime commitment. And Nina just put in the chat here a link to a really great sort of picture that I like, but it's 10 things allies can do. These are things that you all can do just leaving here today from this conversation: listening, getting educated, getting involved, intervening, speaking up, showing up, welcoming discomfort, learning from our past mistakes, staying engaged, donate. I think number 8, learning from your mistakes is really critical. I've certainly made mistakes when it comes to, you know, my doing and, you know, trying to be an ally for somebody and learning that that's not actually what they need. But being able to take all of these things into consideration. I would have liked to hear like a commitment that maybe you all might have wanted, you know, to make, you know, after leaving this conversation, but I don't think we'll have time. But refer to the link, and you know, if you feel so empowered to do so, think about a commitment that you'd like to make to being a good ally based off of, you know, what we've talked about, maybe this chart or maybe something new that you've come up with. Some resources that I wanted to share. There's a really great conference that I've been involved with for the past few years. It's called Taking Nature Black. Nina, if you wouldn't mind maybe just sharing that information with this group. It's a really amazing conference coming up in February, very centered on environmental justice, and they purposely do it in February for Black History Month, but really great space to network and to learn and to connect with other people who are working on environmental justice issues. Dismantling Racism is another really great, very kind of progressive website. There's a lot of interesting documents and tools on the website that I'd encourage you to take a look at. And I'll have Nina share these slides with you if you don't already have them. There's links embedded in here, but the consultants list, we have a whole list of consultants that might be able to help you out, whether it's through your work with this group or through your own organizations or volunteer efforts that you can hire and can come on and do other types of trainings. And then these are two books that I have at home that I think have been really helpful for me. There's a ton of types of literature out there that can also be helpful with these types of conversations, but How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi and The Color of Law. This book focuses a lot on redlining issues and even uses Baltimore as a case study as one of the most redlined cities that we have here in the US. But I know I'm a couple minutes over. I wish we had more time for questions, but Nina, if there's a couple minutes we could stay on, I'd love to just answer any questions that you all might have. That was a lot jam-packed into an hour.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. For those of you who have to get off at 8, we certainly would understand, but for those of you who might be able to give us a couple, bye Phil, those of you who might be able to give us a couple more minutes and want to have some conversation with Mariah, that would be wonderful. Mariah, this is just fabulous. I do want to actually just take 1 second and put my my email address, because in the chat, because I know many of you have been hearing from Jenny Nesla. She's our wonderful woman who's been working with us, but she is saying goodbye to us, and we wish Jenny, we wish you well in your future endeavors. So that would be, we can't thank you enough for working with us. So now you can get in touch with me. The reason I say that too is because you should all be part of a Google group. And so you should be receiving some emails. If you're not receiving emails from us, and that is if in the next few days, I'll give us about a week just in case, if you don't receive this video recording and you don't receive information from us, please be in touch with me. It means that somehow you're not getting the information from the Google group, and we'll make sure that we can get that information to you. There's much to do. You all are here because you are interested, and we believe, as Mariah was saying, that you are eager to commit yourself to doing something to make one small change, at least in this world. And we hope that this series and this evening has helped you do that. We're very eager to hear what that commitment of yours is, and not tonight is fine, or maybe just over the course of time, you can be in touch with us and let us know where you've chosen to give your energy and your passion and your commitment and your skills and your talents, so that we can make this world a better place. So let me just pause here and see if any of you have any comments you want to and questions you want to share with Mariah, and get some last wisdom before we say goodbye to her.
I have a couple questions. I'm thinking about the insidiousness of white saviorism. And I'd like you to, here's the specific example of something that I really grapple with. I was at a session where somebody was, another white person in the environmental group was talking about, there was a Black church more in downtown Baltimore, and about the lack of trees, and people were going, yeah, we should go down and like plant trees. And I think this is what the pastor of the church wanted. And I thought about that, taking that back to my congregation. And it just felt like a version of white saviorism, as opposed to, I would think, working on, legislative issues in the long run might be a more what's the word I want, significant way to really address, environmental injustice and problems. So I don't know if I'm being articulate at all, but could you kind of comment on what I'm thinking and grappling with?
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate the question. If I think that when it comes to the structures, right, for social change and some of the campaign, I'll just say structures that we have, I think a lot of that we have to unlearn how to do in order to build trust and create authentic connections with people. If I wanted to engage with this group, if I was wearing my work hat, I might be thinking in that same lens as you. But if I'm just a common person and I want to learn about this church, I think maybe the first thing I would do is go there on a weekday or a Sunday to get more information about their church, maybe attend one of their services on whichever day they're holding them, maybe start talking with people, building some connections with people, getting more information about initiatives that they're doing outside of Sundays or whichever day that they worship, and start the engagement there from kind of the bottom up approach versus the top down. So I think the dismantling racism, I put the link in the chat box, but there are some really great resources in there around I'll just be frank, but like white supremacist culture and what that can look like. But oftentimes it can look like that. It can look like perfectionism and thinking that projects need to get done really quickly. So that's just kind of a very brief summary. I hope I helped answer that question a bit from you, but that's just kind of my quick judgment about it.
Yeah, and I guess part two is, do you have any thoughts about individual projects like that versus legislative efforts?
Can you expand on your question? What do you mean?
The idea that, like, if an organization has a limited amount of energy, people who want to get involved, and it's a choice between let's get to know another group of people and plant trees versus let's put the energy into trying to get some laws passed that might affect more people. Does that make sense? Like,
yes, absolutely. So I think you're bringing up some really good points, and some of the challenges that a lot of groups have is that these quick timelines are tied to the hands of the funders and the people who might be funding your work, funding your time, and things like that. And even if it's not tied to the hands of the funders, I think that culture that we have to get things done quickly can really work against us when it comes to us trying. I think the first step needs to be trying to take time, maybe even a year, maybe even several months to get to know and to build trust in the community, which would be my advice. It's definitely something that a lot of people grapple with, and it's definitely something that I've made mistakes on, myself, that I've had to kind of reflect on. And I've gone into organized different communities and said, hey, let's get together for this really quick, press event. We're going to take a photo, we're going to put it in the paper, and we're going to show that you all are against X, Y, and Z. And, they've been really great photo ops, but have they impacted some long-term change? I'm not quite sure, but I think that there are better ways that we can be engaging with people so that we are able to be more effective and how we are able to create more, better and long-term and sustainable legislative outcomes.
Any other comments, questions?
Basically, Lenore, I think the bigger thing we have to work on is just, I think about the funders and the funders that we have. I know that the Chesapeake Bay Trust, we've been able to do some work with them about how they're able to change their culture and adapt their culture so that they don't have to put organizations under these sort of short time constraints when it comes to getting work done. But I think that exactly what you said has hit the nail on the head, and it's a common problem that we have in the environmental movement, and it's definitely a type of cultural shift that we need to make.
Kathy, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, from the perspective of I'm coming from the perspective of thinking of the Lutheran Church Synod as a partner here, and that includes the Baltimore area and the Delaware and most of the state of Delaware. So it's a lot of churches. There's 5 of us that have been participating, and we're sort of, in like 3 places in the state of Maryland. So we're really grappling with a path forward now. And my focus now seems to be on trying to figure out an issue that multiple people would feel connected to, but also finding a group of allies. And that's where I'm struggling, is who to start these relationships with, where to find the people who want to partner with a group that, desires to make things better.
Yeah.
I know I'm asking the big question. I'm very connected with what you're talking about. I'm a watershed steward in Howard County, so I'm very connected with clean water. We're very concerned about trash and recycling. And I mean, I have, crap rolls downhill and flows downstream, and guess where it lands?
Yeah.
But are any people there, the people that somehow we can connect with to form an alliance?
I'm sorry, can I interject something here?
Absolutely.
Ken Phelps, yeah. I'm thinking in my years working just in Annapolis, part of it is just paying attention when you go to testify. And you encounter people there. And this is where I've met, like I was in a meeting earlier today with Moms Against Gun Violence and what have you. And I discovered them 2 years ago when we were testifying on the same bill. And we invited them even to speak at our diocesan advocacy day. So it's just paying attention to who is out there and then reaching out to them. And I think creating those relationships and building your power that way.
Thanks.
Mariah, you want to have the last word?
I just wanted to thank you all, for this discussion. It's again a pleasure to meet you, and I wish we could have been in person together. And if you have other questions, my email I think is still on the screen, so you can reach out to me anytime. And if you're looking for some additional resources, I'd be happy to help in any way that I can. But I appreciate you all staying on so late in the evening for the discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did.
Mariah, thank you so very much. We are delighted to have you in our community, delighted to have your wisdom to guide us. And we hope that we can find ways to work with you, in the future. If you're interested in Choose Clean Water Coalition and work that they do, I'm sure that they would be welcoming you to participate in that. And Jenny, again, thank you so much for shepherding this whole program. We are so grateful. Thank my team for all that they've done. Thank you all. And look for emails and Google groups in contact from us so that we can continue to keep in touch and continue, Kathy, to struggle with questions like that, and to make sure that we can all actually do the work that we hope to do. So thank you all. Be safe. Say an extra prayer for America this week. Hope that we will all be safe and that we can get through this transition and create a healed nation. So thank you all. Take care.
Good night.
Bye.